Here we go with our next set of notes in our genetic series, this one on non-Mendelian inheritance. We spent a lot of time learning about dominant and recessive and how all that works, but a lot of times life is more complicated than Mendel's simple rules. What he described did work very well for his pea plants, but not for everything. So in a lot of instances, things are more complicated, and some of those can be explained by the following patterns of inheritance that don't really follow his rules. The first pattern that I want to talk about is incomplete dominance, and this is pretty much just the way it sounds, where the dominant allele is not completely dominant. So in the heterozygous genotype, we get a mixed phenotype. Right? A classic example of that is with this flower called the snapdragon, where a dominant allele gives you a red flower and a recessive allele gives you a white flower. So if we were to do our little Punnett square, just like normal, we would, if this were normal Mendelian inheritance, you would expect this one to be red, these guys to be red, and this one to be white. However, when you actually cross heterozygous snapdragons, you get something different. Right? You get 25% of the plants are red, and 25% of them are white, but the other 50% are pink. Okay, you get a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio instead of the 3 to 1 ratio that Mendel would have predicted. And that's because these two right here, these genotypes, get a mixed phenotype. This big R does not completely dominate the little r, so when you get red and white and you mix them together, what do you get? You get pink. So in this case, you get 25% red, 25% white, and 50% pink. That's incomplete dominance. You have a mixing of phenotypes. The next pattern of inheritance is something called codominance, where neither allele is dominant or recessive, but in this case, the phenotypes do not mix. And a classic example of this is in humans, and this is our blood types, right? We have 4 different blood types. You can be type A, type B, type AB, or type O. And in this case, A and B are codominant to each other, and O is recessive. So if you're type A, your genotype is either homozygous A, big A, or you're heterozygous, big A, and the recessive O. If you're type B, it's very similar. 2 big B's or 1 big B, 1 little O. If you're type O, you have both recessive, you're homozygous recessive. But if you're type AB, your genotype is just AB. You get both A and B. The A is not dominant over the B, and the B is not dominant over the A. So if you look at our little example over here, we have an individual with type A blood, they're heterozygous, and an individual with type B blood. I want to know what types of blood are possible in their children. Well, if we fill this in, we see that you could have this child being type AB, this child being type B, this type being type A, and this child being type O. So which ones are possible? All the different blood types are possible in this particular pairing. We often used, now it's more genetic, but you could use blood typing to figure out parentage, where you could exclude somebody as a parent if the matches didn't work out. For example, if you had a child who was AB, and one parent was O, one parent was A, well, whoops, one of those parents actually isn't the parent, because it would be impossible to get an AB child from a parent that was A and a parent that was O. Like I said, nowadays we would use genetics a little bit more. You can predict with much greater accuracy. Here I have just a chart of the various blood types by region. I think it's kind of neat to look at. We've got, for United States here, the most popular, most common blood type is O positive, and the rarest blood type is actually AB negative. And O negative, this guy here is the universal donor. Anybody can accept O negative blood. That's why they like to use this in emergency situations. If someone came in and lost a lot of blood, you can just give them O negative, you know, you don't have to worry about any interference, any reactions. Versus if you had somebody who was type A and you gave them some type B blood, well, that would be really bad. Basically, the blood would almost clot inside their veins, and pretty much good chance of them dying. So you really want to try to type the blood and give them the same type of blood as whenever you can. But if it's not really possible, you've got the O negative, which is the universal donor, which is pretty handy.